All right, today on No Putts Given, we're talking Rory, we're talking the Open, we're talking some guy shooting over 200 in a round of golf. We're talking Find It, Cut It. Oh boy, you're going to want to see this one. And we're also going to talk a ton of new equipment, and we're going to tell you what we like and what we don't. Let's get it. All right, so let's start with the Open. Why do you call it that, Sam or Harry?
The Open. Why not the British Open? Why is it the Open? Sam.
It's the first ever golf tournament.
Yes, it is.
The very first one.
The very first professional golf
I
tournament.
mean, do you think any other Open out there would get annoyed? Just like...
Well, if you're the first, don't you have the rights to call it whatever word you want?
I guess, but this day and age, no one has rights.
No? Okay.
Or does everyone have rights?
Ooh,
Very
that's a deep tip
thought.
by
That's a
Harry.
deep, yeah. No, the Open Championship was the first ever. I want to say it was played in the 1800s. There were 12 holes played at Prestwood Golf Club.
It was a limited amount of holes, yeah.
Yeah, they didn't have a full 18-hole golf course. When I was in college, one of my really good friends, she went over to Cambridge to study for a summer, and she, hey, Birch, she came back with a book called The Original Rules of Golf, and it was really cool. You know, like the original rules were really weird. A lot of what is now in the rules of golf was back then just worded differently. But like, you know, the teeing ground, there were no like tee boxes. The teeing ground was
This is crazy.
with one club length. So this whole club length rule, you know, if wherever on the golf course, if you
Tony
have to
knows
take a
about
drop,
the club length rule.
Tony's very familiar with taking drops. So the original club length rule came from when you hold out. So let's say you play the first hole, you hole out.
Well, wait a second. When you haul it, you mean I putt, I'm on the green, I putt the ball with the flagstick in, ball goes in hole, and then literally I put my club down and tee up one club away from where I just putted.
There were no flag sticks. However, but yes, that's exactly right. So you would scoop some sand out of the hole, use that as your tee, and then within one club length of the hole, you play the next one.
So you got to putt through divots.
I mean, I wasn't alive back then, but I would assume so.
True.
Yeah, it's evolved quite a lot since those times. But yeah, they started to introduce different things, but it was basically just a field and someone cut like a smaller landing area, which you would call a green right now, and they just used to play from wherever. They didn't really have any set rules. They just used to play.
We might have to go back to 12 holes if this sport's going to survive.
I mean, that's how it started.
I know.
Going back to your old roots, but
With
no,
whiskey.
The Open Championship
Plenty
is
of
really
people
cool.
that still play by that.
Yeah.
rule.
Old Tom Morris played in the first ever Open Championship.
Good old Tom Morris.
He got beat. It was 3 rounds of 12 holes, and I don't know who won, but it wasn't old Tom Morris.
Well, pretty cool. Well, Rory, talking about who's going to win the Open this year, going back to when he was 16 years old, as you can see there.
Just little babby.
Shot a 61 at the age of 16. He should be shooting
Blackout.
he should be shooting like 48 by the time. What is he? 30 years old now?
I don't know. He doesn't look that young though.
So who do you guys? So also Koepka, you said it brought a caddy.
No, his actual. I was just looking it up. His caddy is from Portrush, like the guy.
His caddy that he has now.
Yeah.
Gotcha. I thought you were saying he brought in a new caddy.
No, let me figure out. His
That
name.
would be ballsy though.
Yeah, I don't
Hey.
think anybody would do that. You have to be drunk.
But the good thing about it is,
Ricky Elliott.
is he knows that course back of a hand, and it doesn't look like Koepka really needs help when it comes to majors. But his caddy is obviously going to help him a lot more being from that place. So.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's a totally different style of golf, right? I mean,
For sure. I mean, that's why it's going to be really interesting to see how the newcomers that are not familiar with links golf, where you're hitting blind shots pretty much every other shot, into just huge stands or markers in the back of the green where you just have the center of the green and then you have to rely on your pin sheet for the rest. I mean, it's intimidating, but I love links golf. I love
yeah, I think it'll be interesting to see just kind of the juxtaposition of the guys that are used to playing over there to, you know, the DeChambeaus that are from over here for one, but also have a swing that is very consistent, and you have to vary your swing.
Exactly. I mean, a lot of America American golfers are high launch guys and land it soft. But in links golf, you're going to have to bump and run it. You're going to have to hit higher shots. You're going to have to hit knockdown shots. You're going to have every shot in your arsenal to actually perform well. And that's why it makes the best players perform the best when it comes to the Open.
And we'll get to it in a few minutes here, but that's why you're going to see a lot of club companies coming out with irons like Titleist U500, U510s, and then TaylorMade's. You're seeing Tiger and them putting in some of their more stinger long iron.
If you get it on the fairway, you're going to do well because the rough's going to be high and it's going to be bouncy. I think the forecast is going to be pretty dry and warm and windy. So
yeah, I've heard in the past, like, they say that the Open's a bit of a fluke because it's a little bit of luck because depending on the kind of tee time you get and what the weather's like when you tee off, because it could be hailstorming in the morning and sunny in the afternoon.
Weather's not looking good right now.
Well, or you could play into the wind for the front nine, and then the wind just switches and you're playing into the wind on the back nine. Like it's so easily done when it comes to weather in Europe.
Well, we'll see. So, the odds are interesting. So Rory is the favorite right now, and rightfully so. The guy, if you look at his last 4, I think, appearances there, he's averaging like T2 and a half, basically. So Rory's a 9-1, Koepka's a 10-1. Some more interesting notes from others that will be in the field. Dustin Johnson, 16-1. Tiger, 18-1. You got DeChambeau is 45-1, and your boy Poulter's a 75-1.
Stick a fiver on him. Why not? If he comes up and wins you 5 times 75, that's a lot.
500 reasons not to.
Hey, but it's a cheeky fiver, so why not just put it on there? You might come up trumps.
Yeah, and then nobody's boy, Patrick Reed, is 95-1.
He's gonna miss the cut.
You think so?
Tony, who you got?
I think at this point you have to sort of just assume Koepka's going to be right there in a major.
That's my
so
pick.
I want to say like those words exactly are what you said for the U.S. Open.
Yeah. Richie 3Jack over at WRX, who does some analytical based predictions, has DeChambeau on his list this week, so I like that one. I think
he's playing well.
As much as anybody can be due to win a major, I think Bryson's due.
Let me ask you a question, Tony. If I ask you this question 100 times, who do you think is going to win the next tournament? Do you think you're ever going to deviate off of either DeChambeau or Koepka?
Well, when Koepka finishes out of the top 3, maybe, but until that happens, no.
It's a safe
absolutely
bet, right?
Not.
You're not going Patrick Reed, huh?
No, I'm no.
He's a great guy though.
Patrick Reed. Yeah, I hear people love him.
Did you get the sarcasm in my voice?
I did.
Okay, I'm glad you got it. Okay.
All right, well, let's put a bet on it, right? So here's the bet. It's just between you two. Okay? So you pick your guy,
Can't lie for him.
And
See him on the field?
whoever loses has to play the other person with a full bag of infomercial clubs.
Okay. I'm gonna go to the one that I did for the U.S. Open and Koepka.
You're going Koepka?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm going Rory then.
Ooh,
okay.
It's gonna be interesting. All right.
Now, do they have to win, or are we just talking finishing? So
It's
if Rory
finishing.
finishes higher than Koepka,
Whoever finishes ahead,
one way or the other, one of you idiots is playing with infomercial clubs.
What if they tie?
Then we have
then you
something.
both play with infomercial clubs.
Against you?
Left-handed.
At least to be fair, I still get my strokes though. All 27 of them.
Can I use that piston driver, the Easy Golf?
Faux show. Did we ever send that back?
At least I'll get off the tee well.
All right. Well, let me ask you a question. With infomercial clubs, do you think you're going to beat a 194? I mean, a 202 like Trey Billardero shot?
I want to say yes.
You think you're going to?
That was in the U.S. Open qualifier.
Yeah.
Do I have to use the hammer putter?
That's a definitive, yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
It's one putts every time, man.
Yeah.
Well, if you take the arms out of it, it's only wrists.
Correct.
That's what the directions say.
Mm-hmm. Pow.
Well, I guess I'll beat 194 then.
Well, the guy that shot supposedly 194 actually didn't. He shot a 202, which is pretty funny because the USGA computer system, I guess, didn't go above 19 for a hole. So they actually figured out that he shot a 202. Tony, you got a shot.
Yeah, no, that's a solid 2-round score for me.
All right. Well, we're gonna see who wins. Let us know who you think's gonna win. But between these two guys, Chad and Brad over here, and we'll find out who wins and who's gonna play with the infomercial clubs. And next up is what we call Shot of the Truth. And this week's version is a Find It, Cut It version again. What do you know? So
it's just getting crazier every week we do this.
It is getting a little crazy.
I mean, I didn't think he could get any worse, but I was very wrong.
Pleasantly surprised.
Well,
I mean, this is the thing though, is I just played in the USAM qualifying, not Tuesday gone, but the Tuesday before, and I was getting ready for the tournament, and then I was like, well, what ball am I going to play? Because all this Find It, Cut It stuff has kind of made me scared within the ball industry. So I had to go with the three brands that I know are consistent, and that's Strix and Titleist.
Well, I would say that we
Bridgestone.
believe to be more
Yes,
consistent.
believe.
Well,
Yes, yes.
There's a
Believe.
lot of cutting to be done, to say the least.
That's a good
yeah,
point.
we're just getting started. But, yeah, I mean, we were talking about it earlier. Sam and Harry were both very good college golfers, great post-college golfers. And prior to working for mygolfspy, I asked them the question, like, when you played golf and you went out there and played with a dozen golf balls, did you ever, like once in your career, not go, yeah, I assume that all these balls in this box are not only similar, but identical, right? So I would assume if we did a survey, focus group study, or whatever with our readers or consumers in general, I think if we asked people before this whole thing started, I think the majority would assume the same.
Mm-hmm.
And what we're finding, and not just now, we've known about for a while that is not the case. And there are some companies that are worse than others. This week, Sam happened to be cutting open balls in the test facility, and one that was very concerning was the ball that you're getting ready to see here in a second, and it was a Callaway Chrome Soft. And that's about as bad of a core centering as we have ever seen.
Yeah, I've never seen anything that lopsided before.
Now, that being said, Callaway, it might not be known to the average consumer, but in the golf industry, for those that have cut open golf balls on the regular and know anything about golf balls, Callaway is known to be a, pretty common offender to not being able to center their cores. Would you agree with that, Tony?
Yeah, I think it's, again, right, a lot of it is conjecture, sometimes from competitors. But yeah, if you go around the industry and say, hey, who has what problems, this is one that continues to come up. So I kind of look at it as, look, we all know that these brands talk, and they talk shit about one another to a degree. But my general thinking is if three companies that have sort of no business working together on anything all tell you the same story, then there's probably something to it. And yeah, this sort of core issue is something we'd heard about. I actually heard about it from other media guys who did a ball test quietly a couple of years ago, and as far as I know, never published anything, saw something similar to what we saw. And for us, it's like, right, it's always a curiosity. So we do our ball test, we publish the results, we take some heat. There was some anomalous stuff, like a Chrome Soft is one example of a few of a ball that went dramatically offline. And so our question,
with a robot that, generally speaking, shouldn't be putting
and so you
balls
check the
anywhere
robot
but
numbers,
within
so you make sure the robot swung its swing, and you check the numbers, and then you go around and you ask people, go, hey, we saw this, what could it be? And they say, yeah, well, if you saw a spin axis tilt, then it was probably an off-center core. And Sam, I don't know, was this the ball that you cut open? Was this one of the ones we actually tested, or was this from somewhere else?
This was part of the box of the balls that we saved, of balls that we tested.
So yeah, I mean, so certainly, and again, we're still trying to get more information. I want to be transparent about that, right? We are trying to put a value on, hey, if a ball is X off-center, what impact does that have? Or if the core the cover is thicker on one side, what impact
all right,
can
so
that
great
have?
point. So a lot of people are asking, all right, you guys all these people out there are now finding and cutting golf balls. Like I told you last week, you created a monster, which is going to end up being a good thing, I think, for all golfers and the industry. But right now, what we're doing is learning, right? And we know information. We know, for one, for those asking, like, what does this do to my golf ball when I hit it? One, this definitively affects performance of a golf ball, meaning that ball will not perform the same as a ball a ball that has a center core. But there are other issues, quality control issues that happen with golf balls, no different than any other product that is made. There are tolerances, there are things like that. But this ball should have never made it into a box. And, I spoke with the CEO of Callaway yesterday, and he readily admits that, and they are investing heavily, supposedly. What we say around here is it's all bullshit till it ain't bullshit. So anybody can say anything. That does not mean I do not believe them when they say they're going to invest heavily to fix this problem. Because in my opinion, and some others, I think they were focusing more on the paint on the outside of the ball with patterns and things like that than they were focused on the quality control on the inside of the ball, because you couldn't see the inside of the ball. Problem is, Tony's created this monster now where now you can see the inside of the ball. And guess what? There's a shitload of Callaway Chrome Soft and other balls that are sitting in the woods that are going to start to be cut open. And no matter if they fix the problem today or tomorrow, there are hundreds and thousands of balls sitting out there that I guarantee you're going to find similar issues that we're finding.
I mean, that's from the last 5 years, right? Is it like we're thinking that it's gone back for 5 years that it's been going through?
Tony, you can probably talk on this more, but I mean, this problem happened before the Chrome Soft, correct, with Callaway balls?
Yeah, I mean, and again, look, I hate the idea that we're just piling it on Callaway, or that's the perception, but I mean,
well, this is a Callaway ball that we're talking about.
Oh yeah, and certainly, right. Callaway was the only company to come out and call the results of our ball test into question, and I think, sort of that ball that Sam cut open kind of shows, hey, like this is how what we saw, as crazy as it sounded at the time, when we say, hey, a ball went 30, 40 yards offline, this is how it can happen. So yeah, I was certainly more curious about Callaway balls, so I've gone back as far as Hex Black. I've cut open a couple of Tour IXs as well, and yeah, there are some centering issues I've seen, what I would describe as batter issues or lack of consistency to the mix. And what I mean by that, I got one right here. So I've called this one, this is also a Chrome Soft, call it a Chrome Soft Swirly. And hopefully you can see those swirl patterns right there.
Move it a little closer to the camera if you can, Tony, so people can see.
I mean, we've definitely seen some of these in other balls. And yeah, so that's some balls that we've cut open recently, the core itself is just the same color, and then there's like a core, and then it's like seems a little differentiated color within that core.
So that's a little bit different. So that's a couple different things. So right, this here, the swirly, and
that's
again,
poor mixing, correct?
What's that?
That's poor mixture, correct?
Right. Yeah. So when you part of the, I guess, I don't know if it's technically the first step, but it's an early step in the process, right? You sort of take all your ingredients and throw it into an industrial equivalent of a KitchenAid, right? And it just mixes it all up, and then you create your batter that way. And so that's something that should be a consistent color in most golf balls, right? You shouldn't see swirl patterns. And with that one, what I did was I actually cut it twice, and you can kind of see how the swirls kind of gradiate. And
all right, Tony, for golfers out there right now, until we can get some definitive performance numbers, meaning if your core is off this much, this is how much to expect for performance differences of this kind. What are 3 common things that you see that are red flags in lack of quality control inside of a golf ball? For one, it's off-center core, right?
Off-center cores we've seen, and seen it in multiple brands, so let's not just say, hey, this is just a one brand problem. It happens. Off-center cores, lack of uniform thickness in the cover is another one, so you'll see sort of visibly more urethane on one side of the ball than the other. That one's pretty common. The swirly core, so inconsistent mixing, I guess, is how I would describe that. And sometimes you get cover defects, so sort of like almost like part of it got melted or scratched or something like that at the factory,
and that can affect performance. So
anything
speaking of that real quick, that means so you guys out there that are getting your balls refinished, right, or buying balls that are refinished, What do you
Stop
say?
it.
Yeah. And
Don't
why?
do that.
Tell them why that is, Tony.
So basically, look, you need the cover of the golf ball to be as uniform as possible, meaning, the dimple depth is what it's designed to be. So as soon as you start sort of repolishing and repainting, you can get uneven layering of the dimples, and that's going to create a ball that doesn't fly the way it's designed to.
Okay,
so yeah.
Let me ask you a question.
That's not where you want to save money on a golf ball. Definitely not.
I'm a golfer. I just bought 6 dozen Titleist Pro V1s. I don't want to cut open every single Pro V1 to figure out if there's an issue with them. Is there something that I can do at home to check the quality of the golf ball
Epsom salt test.
before
Yeah, we've talked
basically
like
the
the Check
only
Go Pro spinning, and again, it doesn't really check the quality, I would say, right? The Epsom salt, when you suspend it, and again, guys, this is pretty simple, right? You just mix Epsom salt with water, and you just keep adding Epsom salt until you get to the point where the ball floats. And what that's going to do, the ball is going to tilt to the heavy side. So the heavy side of the ball, if there is one, is going to go down. Now, the faster, and then, once you sort of identify it, kind of mark the top of the ball, and then just start rolling the ball and get it rolling. And the faster that it returns to the same spot, the more kind of out of round or off center
So
the core
this
or
Callaway
some piece
ball
of weight
here-
in the ball would be.
This Callaway ball here would flip to that side really quickly.
Yeah, theoretically, and that's
Yeah.
the same thing, right? When you hit it with when you hit the ball, whether it's with a robot or with your own swing, right? At impact, that ball is going to immediately fall to the heavy side. The heavy side's going to drop, and if you talk about basic ball flight laws, what that basically amounts to is a rapid increase or rapid change in the spin axis. So, that's why if you look at our data, Sam, as you recall, we were looking at some of the numbers and we're like, is this right? We saw spin axis tilts in the plus or minus 10 degree range, when typically it would just be a degree or two. That's why it's at impact, the ball tilting to the heavy side and creating that curvature.
And that's as soon as it comes off that tee.
Oh yeah, it's immediate. Sure.
So
that's the thing. Everything that happens at impact happens in fractions of seconds. So, yeah.
So the problem, great question, Sam. So if I'm a golfer and I just spend $100 or whatever on golf balls, how do I know which ones are good? That's the problem. We don't have x-ray machines at home, most of us, to be able to determine where the cores of these balls are, if that is the one thing you're going to look for. Like, there's obviously more issues than core going on, right? So even if the Epsom salt tells you something, it's not going to tell you about the swirls in the core. It's not going to tell you necessarily about some of the other issues. The problem is, this is a problem that the golf ball industry has, right? And that's just the way it is. There are companies definitively that do a better job at this, but at the end of the day, this is real.
Yeah.
And this needs to be fixed by companies,
And who's to blame for this? Is it a both company and
manufacturer? You have to
manufacturer?
give a shit about quality control in whatever company you work for. I don't give a damn if you're making golf balls or you're, writing articles. It does not matter, right? You have to have checks in place to find these things and make sure they don't get out into the world, and we get, people start cutting them, because even if you have quality control checks, sometimes you need quality control checks after quality control checks. There have to be checks and balances for this stuff, and the companies that invest in that have less of these issues.
Well, and I think it's important to note, like, centering a core, it's an easy thing to say, but it's
hard to do.
A really difficult thing to do when you think about like the entire process, right? So you have to have like a mechanical process that centers kind of your bottom layer. Every layer has to have a precise process to center. That's extremely difficult to do. And that's before we even talk about the fact, like, these things essentially go in an oven to cook, right? And so think about the grill at your house, right? How difficult it is to maintain consistent center temperature in the center of the grill, in the front of the grill, in the back of the grill, right? That's what you have to do. All of these temperature has to be consistent everywhere in the oven that cooks it, right? So that's part of it. And inconsistent temperature, Harry, is part of why you see kind of that different coloring in the center. It becomes more of like a lava cake. Okay. And some companies do that by design. But to answer your question, Adam, like, to center cores and build the technology and the machinery and the precision into all your process to do that costs a lot of money. And
here's my answer to your response. If you don't have that in place, don't sell goddamn golf balls to people.
But here's the thing, right? Some of this is to a degree on us, right? Because you look at you're charged, say, $45 a golf ball, right? Or dozen golf balls, and consumers, some of you, we hear it all the time. It's like, these guys are charging us this much because they have to pay tour pros, right? If they didn't have to pay tour pros, it wouldn't be this. No, there's precision that costs money. And quite honestly, if you want a better golf ball, if you want a truly perfect golf ball from every manufacturer, like that's not a $45 or $50 a dozen problem. That's a $60 a dozen a problem. Like that's the level of precision.
Yeah, we were talking to somebody,
and you're not going to pay for that.
We were talking to
golfers aren't going to pay for that.
We were talking to somebody the other day, and they had a eye-opening statement. You know, they are not in the industry. They got exposed to the industry, and they walked out of a situation and went, man, like, these companies that get it right, that put all this effort into this, I never wanted to spend that amount of money on their balls. But after I've seen it, you go, I'm shocked they don't sell them for $100 a dozen. That's how much effort and work goes in, and machinery and time and just resources and everything that goes together to make these balls perform well. And most golfers just don't know that. But that all being said, I think as golfers, if I'm going to Walmart and buying a $15 a dozen, I can maybe expect a ball like that we're seeing at $45 a dozen. And if you're going to call it tour quality, I'm not expecting to see that, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and like I said, Callaway was clear. They don't find that acceptable either. And so, you know,
well, they found it acceptable until we cut that ball open. How about that?
Well, again, you know, I don't know if they would say, yeah, that was acceptable till we got caught, or holy shit, you know, we need to rapidly improve the quality control.
Yeah, but
process.
it's been going on for such a long time.
You'd be hard pressed to find anybody anywhere who would look at that ball and go, yeah, that.
Okay, well, let's be. This is called no putts given, so let's be honest here. We've been on calls with Callaway over the last few days. Yesterday, I talked to the CEO of Callaway, Chip Brewer. It was a great call. But I asked him all the same question. If we don't do this ball test and we don't cut that ball open, are these phone calls happening? I didn't get a answer to any of those questions from anybody, you know? So maybe they are behind the scenes planning. And from what I've heard, they are planning on fixing their ball plant facility and investing a lot of money into it, right? I hope they are. And maybe I'm sure that was happening before this came about. Yeah. But I don't know. It is kind of, the timing is interesting, right?
Yeah, and what we don't know, right? Obviously, like I said, everybody agrees that ball shouldn't have left the factory. Whether that's a 1 in 100,000, a 1 in 10,000, a 1 in 100, I don't know. And again, that's why we want to do this whole find it, cut it thing. Is, you know, like I said, don't buy it, cut it. If you find it in the woods, instead of sticking it in your bag, because you should be playing the same damn ball anyway, every shot, every round, just cut it and see what we find. Because if we can crowdsource this thing, rather than golfers having to take our word for it, like, just let's put it out there and see if we can get enough of everything from everywhere and everybody. We're going to pretty quickly be able to tell who has issues and who doesn't. Because again, like, my feeling is if it's not readily visible to the naked eye, it's probably not a big deal. But when you see something like what we found, then yeah, that's a big deal. And I know golfers have sort of pushed back and go, well, what about the different densities, and that could offset this and that. And like, look, at the end of the day, companies are using different materials, right? Different inner core, different outer core, different formulations for a reason. Titleist, Bridgestone, Strixon, everybody else is working hard to center their cores for a reason. If this stuff didn't matter, companies wouldn't invest heavily in trying to get it right. So while we can't say, yes, absolutely it matters to this degree, or this ball is 75% worse or better or whatever, at this point we can't give you that information. All I know is everybody who makes a ball is trying to avoid making a ball like that.
Well,
so
I think
absolutely matters.
I think they're trying to do that now because we called out golf ball companies.
No, I think I as much as I'd love to take credit for everything, look, this is, as I said, I've found evidence that to some degree this problem goes back a number of years. If I've found it, they've certainly found it, and I'm sure this is.
But exactly, but there's my point right there. Is if they've known about it, they just haven't said anything about it.
I think they chose, you know, when they did this ball war and 5-year war and all this stuff, I think they chose, you got to pick your battles, right? If I had to guess, and I'm just making an assumption here, they chose some more flashy marketing things like the Truvis pattern, the painting on the outside of the ball, ways to get people to start focusing on the Callaway ball and get their attention away from the Titleist ball.
Yeah,
And that got prioritized maybe below centering cores of golf balls. I think now that they've gained some market share, they're probably going, all right, let's get this shit right, you know? Yeah, I think we had totally everything to do with it. I think this just was a catalyst to push it maybe a little faster.
Maybe they over the edge.
If you go back years upon years upon years at this point, right? Titleist has been a dominant number one in the golf ball space for basically as long as anyone can remember, and probably then some. And for years and years and years, manufacturers have tried to take market share from Titleist, and everything has failed, right? Whether it's undercutting them on price or whatever, like the strategy to a large degree has been, all right, let's essentially make a tour quality ball and find a way to compete with Titleist with a ball that's just like Titleist. And I think a great example is that conversation we had with Chris Bashal at Mizuno last year, where he talked about the mistake they made with the JPX EZ, and basically Mizuno was trying to make a ping, and that's essentially what all the ball companies have been trying to do is make a Titleist or a ball that is perceived to be as good as Titleist. So, and you cannot compete with Titleist making a ball that you can't otherwise differentiate.
You can't beat Titleist at being Titleist, basically.
Exactly, and so when you can sort of tell a story where, hey, soft, right? We have a soft, fast core. Well, guess what? Soft is fundamentally different than anything Titleist did. It is a way to differentiate your product in the marketplace and sort of make it more compelling than any of the alternatives. And when you put a Truvis pattern on a ball, yeah, that is different. It's to a degree, it's cool, maybe exciting, but biggest thing, it's different from a Titleist.
Well, not only different, but it's you. It's you own that brand. You own that look.
Right.
When people think about Truvis, they don't think about Titleist. They think about who? Callaway, right?
Yeah, and let's be clear, right? And again, we haven't seen the process. We have an open invite to the ball plant. We're going to probably go out there later this fall to see how Callaway does things. But they made it very clear. Look, putting those patterns on a ball is not easy to do. And first of all, they bought or licensed that Truvis, right? So they essentially own that process. It is now unique to Callaway. And they developed machinery and engineered all this really cool stuff to put those patterns on the ball. And you've seen it evolve to, and they did the same thing with Triple Track, right? They licensed the technology, developed the machinery and the tools and the know-how to put those lines precisely on a ball. So they've invested in Truvis patterns.
Look, Callaway has the coolest really golf ball in golf. There is no doubt about it, right? I mean, the Truvis is the coolest ball. The Triple Track is cool, but they get,
different, yeah, for sure.
As long as they get this right, I'm sure it will be great for them.
And so, and I think, like I said, I think you sort of had to differentiate to gain share. And now that they have unequivocally gained share, right, a definitive number two in the marketplace, now they have an opportunity where they sort of have a reputation. People like the ball. People like the Callaway product. I think Callaway is cool. And now they have a position to compete on cool with potentially, right, if they get everything right, if they improve the quality and I think raise the compression, right? Because we know soft is not competitive in the tour space. So if they do those things, now they have a ball that potentially, right? Because there's at some point there'll be a new ball. We don't know what it looks like, but it's a ball that can potentially compete with Titleist and Bridgestone on a performance level and still have the cool factor that comes with Truvis, Triple Track, and whatever other cool stuff.
Yeah, then I think they're on a home run if they get all of that right.
All right, well, to end it, do you think the Chrome Soft survives this?
If they definitively come out and say we have fixed everything,
I'm not talking about fixing it. I'm talking about the name Chrome Soft.
Then no, I don't think it does.
Do you think they're going to have to change the name of that ball?
If they start taking our data seriously, where soft does really equals slow, I mean.
So my thinking is, look, if you're going to make what is legitimately a tour quality ball, if you're going to do that, you need to raise the compression, and at some point you raise that compression
to a point where you can't call it soft
to a point beyond where you can legitimately call it soft, because at some point somebody's going to compare this theoretical new Callaway ball that is fast, not soft fast, legitimately fast, to an older Chrome Soft, and the feel is going to be wildly different.
Well, it is interesting, right, that they really quietly firmed up that compression, right, without any telling anybody.
Well, that was just on the Chrome Soft X triple track. One of the Callaway guys told me it's slightly firmer. I don't know what slightly means exactly. I've heard somewhere in the ballpark of 8 to 10%. So yeah, to be a tour ball, it needs to be firmer. I don't think anybody argues that who knows anything about golf ball performance at this
Agreed.
point. That is a legitimate fact.
Well,
and let's be clear. Look, and again, so we had that call a couple weeks ago, and Callaway was upfront about it. And it's true for most, not all golf brands, but yeah, they said, yeah, look, we have tour pros that play a different ball than what's on the shelf. And Titleist has tour pros that play a different ball than what's on the shelf. And TaylorMade has tour pros that play a different ball than what's on the shelf. Not all of them, but there are tour.
Yeah, and there's reasons. I tried to explain this to somebody the other day. If you make 3 balls, you don't want to make 47 different balls, right? And if the guy that you have on tour happens to be in between 2 balls, I think it's fairly easy to change the mixture a little and make him a ball, but also not make 4,700 balls available to the public, right? I mean, that's just common sense.
That's a lot.
That's a problem. Like, and everybody goes, well, they should. Like, no, you have to look at the other side of it. That is a huge problem for retailers, right?
Hell yeah.
Where instead of stocking 3 Titleist tour balls, you're now asked to stock 8 because people want left dot and left dash and whatever stuff. No, like 80.
They're not trying to deceive the consumer. It's just they have to fill the need of the tour guy, which happens to be in between 2 of their balls, but that doesn't mean they should.
Those guys are way more discerning than the average golfer. Those guys can tell the difference in performance from shot to shot. Like, for a consumer, like having one ball that launches here and another here is fine. Tour guys want to be there, then you give them the ball
until you fine tune your game to a tour player standard who wants to get a specific thing within and around the greens if they want it to release a little bit more or whatever.
Which brings the whole conversation. We'll just kind of end it here, and that's why these balls existed in the world, because the average golfer wouldn't even know that the ball was causing that. The DeChambeaus, the PGA Tour pros hit that ball. I've heard from the people on the tour that have said, like, they've hit some of these balls and they go, look, I'm not playing that ball. It's not consistent enough,
You'll probably lose that ball before you get a chance to figure out that it's actually the ball, right?
But you wouldn't blame it on yourself as an average golfer.
Exactly. Well, that's what I mean.
Well, you would, right? You would.
That's what I mean.
I'm sorry. You wouldn't blame it on the ball. You're correct.
Right, because you wouldn't even have enough time to figure out that that's the ball causing it.
Mm-hmm.
Totally agree. All right. Well, that's Shot of the Truth this week. We could go on for hours about golf balls right now, and we'll probably have another discovery by the time this happens next week, especially with all the people out there cutting them up. So anyway, Tony, you have anything to say to all the Find It, Cut It people that you created this? So
yeah, keep going, guys, and I'm gonna definitely keep going. I'm just kind of been blown away by the response. It's awesome, and I'm just gonna ask everybody out there. Look, we're not trying to throw anybody under the bus. We just want to find what's what. So let's all try and do it the right way. Take quality photos if you can. Don't mislead. Like, try and show the side stamp if you can, so we all know what we're looking at, and there's no question of, hey, is this legitimate or somebody trying to make somebody look bad.
Good point. And just remember, for everybody else out there that tries to defend this brand or that brand, or tries to fight in the Twitter sphere of whatever monotony. Just remember, like, we're not doing this for any other reason than you. Like, we're literally trying to make the industry a better place and hold them accountable for some things like this, and do testing to the best of our ability for consumers. We literally are consumer first. And for everybody out there that disagrees with this, I have still no clue why you would be doing it. We're making, Callaway is saying they're going to make better quality golf balls. That's good for all golfers. Yeah. So anyway, get out there, find them, cut them, and until next week, we'll see what you come up with. And starting now, we're going to get on to the tons of new releases in the golf industry.
It's a busy week.
Yeah, why this week?
It's the Open.
I guess
that was a dumb
question. You could say it's because the Open, there's some enhanced visibility with the Open. But at the same time, like, all the visibility is on the Open, so I don't know. I think you risk getting equipment lost in the shuffle as well. But again, part of it too is companies want to put, some of this stuff isn't for tour players anyway, but to a degree, companies want to put this stuff in tour players' hands ahead of the Open, it's going to get seen, and if it's going to get seen, you might as well have the information out there, I guess, is probably the argument for why the sudden rush of releases this year.
And you see a lot of utility type stuff, hybrid type stuff generally around this time, or you have in the past. So it's a time where you start seeing like the Titleists and whatever. But we're going to start with Mizuno, and here's why. Because for one, just a reminder, Mizuno has not only done well in our testing this year, they have literally swept.
Dominated.
Every category they were in, yeah.
They have dominated. So I just want to drive this home to people. If performance, not marketing, determined the number one selling iron in golf, which unfortunately is not the case, Mizuno would probably be number one. And they deserve it. And it's unfortunate that they don't get more eyes on them. I still, to this day, can only come up with one reason, and that's lack of marketing, comparatively speaking, to other brands. But iron to iron, there is not a better iron out there, in my opinion, than Mizuno Golf. And they proved it this year. And it kind of showed us through our testing. Their models are similar, right? And their philosophies throughout their different styles are similar. So to see them constantly show up at the top was nice to see, not for Mizuno, not just for our testing purposes, but it validates the testing. It validates a design philosophy as performing well from the way we do our testing. So for you guys and girls that are out there that have never tried Mizuno for whatever reason, because you've heard some other iron is longer or whatever, or fancier, just go demo them, comparatively speaking, to what you own, and just see. Because like I said, they are by far the number one performing iron in our testing this year, and it wasn't even close. So what do we got for them this year, Tony? The MP20, and when you look at that picture, you just go, damn. Like,
yeah, I mean, we always go damn when we see blades anyway, but yeah.
That's a double damn right there.
Yeah, that's one of the ones that I've looked at and was like, might
not
get back
just
to
the
blades.
blade, Matt. Show them the other.
Yeah, just
show
I
me
mean, and then you go blade, and then you go MMC, and you're like, damn, and then you go to the HMB, which I guess sort of officially stands for the hot metal blade.
That has
Chris
a little.
Chris and I
has a
have
little bit
dubbed
of
it the
Titleist.
hot mother bitch.
Hot mother bitch is what it's being called behind closed doors.
Good night.
Certainly behind our closed doors.
Well, I don't know. Is the door closed?
Or our open doors. I'm just kind of shouting it.
So,
hot mother bitch.
I don't know how you can make a better looking iron. Like,
That just
Yeah, and
they
we've said
seem
it,
to
like,
improve.
looks don't matter, and feel doesn't matter, but if you can get get an iron that looks like that feels like Mizuno is known for and performs like Mizuno have performed in our tests recently, like, damn.
Yeah. So really quickly,
damn.
what's that?
Their MP18s won our Players Irons test last year.
Yeah.
And then
Yep,
their
split
JPX
cavity.
line won this year.
Yeah.
When does it end?
And I want to be clear, right? It was Mizuno's choice. In hindsight, maybe we should have tested them anyway. But it was Mizuno's choice to not submit MP18 again, knowing that MP20 was right around the corner. They're consistent 2-year cycles, and in fact, they actually announced a little earlier this year than in the past. So it would have been interesting to put JPX up against MP, knowing that they're a little bit different for different golfers, but
next year we'll have the chance to do that because we'll have the new
I think we
MP
should.
line, and yeah.
So just a reminder for everybody out there, these are called the MP20s. And a few tidbits, Tony can give you more, but a couple cool things is there's a picture of the copper underlay that we have for everybody. They don't really have an answer on why they're doing this, meaning there's no data that shows that this makes clubs feel better from an acoustic standpoint, sound frequency standpoint, but they know it does, and they're gonna stick with it, and they're putting copper underlay under the iron because
so all 3 models too. Let's speak. So yeah, this is the copper. You get copper with any of the 3 models.
I mean, damn, just make a whole set look like that.
No
That looks
shit.
good.
Those are the ones I want, man.
Demand for that
They're the
already.
ones like, give me those.
Damn. Well, anyway, they say that the really good golfers can tell a difference just subjectively. So why not put it there? It does cost more money, but Also, for you lefties out there, I know you're going to love to hear this. Mizuno has some of these new irons available in left hand.
Yeah, so it's
while they last.
they're calling it the SEL set, special edition lefty. So what they're doing is pre-bundling a combo set for you. So it's HMBs up to the 5 iron, I believe, and then 6 through pitching wedge in the MB/blade. So
I'm seeing a lot of companies doing the combo sets, and it's not just one company, it's a multitude of companies that are doing that.
Well, it makes sense,
It makes a lot of sense. I have them in mind, combo set. I wouldn't.
It's just more. It's a la carte, right? You can build a set how you like. So
that was kind of one of the interesting notes from our conversation with Chris Vachal leading up to this release. So Mizuno went back and looked at the data, right? So they built MP18 to be comboed. It was like really everybody's kind of mixed and matched with Mizuno. You've always been able to do it. But it was really the first time they sat down and said, what if we built 4 models that could be mixed and matched into a player's bag in any combination they wanted, so that you get kind of seamless transitions as far as offset and top lines and things like that. So that's what they did with MP18. And what they found, like over 80% of the sets they sold had at least 2 models. And granted, a lot of that's going to be fly high long irons with whatever else you played, but they definitely saw some guys that were doing fly highs to MMCs to blades, or fly highs to MMC to split cavity, or any combination there. And so they kind of continued that trend and said, all right, we're gonna give you 3 models, and they're all designed to be mixed and matched to whatever degree you want. But the other thing they did was create a lot more differentiation between the models, so that you can clearly say, hey, obviously there's a breakdown and forgiveness between the blade and everything else, but you can also say, hey, all right, I want higher launching long irons. You could go HMB, and more penetrating scoring irons you mix with the MBs. So,
well,
options.
All right. So what I will try to reiterate is, like Tony said, we don't care about sound or feel or anything like that. But if you can get sound, feel, and performance, why not choose that? And Mizuno has proved all year this year that they have done all 3 of those. And these look not any worse, but better. We don't know about the performance of these, but I highly doubt they went way off right or left compared to their design philosophy for performance.
It just looks so clean.
All right, so
would you say, Harry, that they're naughty?
They are naughty. Like, look at them. They are just naughty irons.
You want to spank those irons?
You want to do some naughty things to them?
They are just... I wouldn't play blades again, but they are naughty looking.
Does Daddy like you?
I don't know, man.
But that's
this is the first...
Let's talk about that real quick. So Harry just said he wouldn't play blades, and this is one we're going to talk about later on as we move to one of the other releases. But so in talking to Chris, what he said, something to keep in mind, like once you get to about plus or minus 8 iron loft based on how you deliver the club, like forgiveness kind of becomes less important, and loft kind of takes over as what determines distance and to a degree.
Yeah, but that's pretty common sense, the 8-9 wedge. But I mean,
right. So that's what I'm saying. Like, Chris is saying, hey, yeah, you should think about maybe going to the blade in the 8-9 and the wedge if that's going to give you the trajectory you want.
I've been saying that I would never play blades ever again since I was in high school when I had 690 MBs. This is honestly the first set of irons where I would honestly
give them a shot.
I might give them a shot.
Yeah,
well, I haven't even seen them.
I don't know if I would. I would probably like your 58, your 60, or all those like lob wedges and gap wedges. I play blades in those, but that's because you're consistently delivering in the same way. I don't think I have a consistent variable that allows me to play a blade that if I hit it slightly off the toe, it's going to go X amount shorter, or it doesn't feel as good.
Like Tony always says, play the most forgiving, workable iron you can stand to look at.
And that's what they say. They say that blades is easy to work.
This is something, again, we'll talk about a little later, but just go back and look at some of the progressions and sets that are on the market right now. I think like the example that kind of popped into my head was some of the TaylorMade with the speed slot technology and the stuff they put in the sole. If you look at the progression of those irons, once you get to the 8 iron, right, that's where the slots disappear. they
And
take
the
it out
speed
because
phone.
again, everything is driven by loft at that point, and so they are taking out the speed technology.
I hear Tony.
and the forgiveness.
Here's what I hear from Tony. He's pushing
Justifying he wants.
Oh,
to play
he
the
wants the
blades,
blades, man.
But I think, Bo's
He's
almost
basically
convinced me.
convincing himself right now.
Hey, whatever you got to do.
I may
man.
try.
He's convinced me.
I may try it.
I'm here for it.
Well, again,
Sam's
and
like,
we know like part of my
here.
problem is too much loft, too high, too much dynamic loft, and so I may lose a bit of forgiveness. But if I can get better ball flight,
All right,
see.
well, let's get off these real
Move
quick.
on.
Yes, and go to the opposite end of the spectrum, which is the Callaway Epic Forged irons.
Yeah.
These irons focus on distance, right? And they're $2,400 a set. The premium set, kind of that, in my opinion, PXG effect is continuing its reign here over the last few years of these companies now pushing that limit and having something that can compete, and it offers them a new opportunity to have another iron in the lineup that kind of differentiates from some of the other stuff. But in my opinion, it's still their philosophy is winning those launch monitor battles because that's what wins sales, right? But in our testing over the last few years, that has not done very well.
Right.
So, a lot of tech stuff that I'll let Tony talk about. One of the more interesting things, the microspheres and the tungsten placement of it, which is interesting. So, Tony, what can you tell us about what do we like about these irons? What should consumers be interested in hearing or knowing about them?
Yeah, I guess the first thing that springs to mind, right? So if you compare this, so this is the replacement for the Epic iron, right? In that kind of that ultra premium space or high end, whatever you want to call it. And I think if you look at Epic, it didn't really look the part of a premium iron. I think this time Callaway, from what we've seen, right, we don't have these in hand yet, but they look really good in that space, right? Like this looks like a high polish premium offering. This looks like it costs money, and a lot of it. So I like that. They've done a lot too, they say, to improve the feel, because that was kind of the knock on the Epic too, is that it just didn't feel like a
If you're
premium
going to
iron.
sell a set of irons for over $2,000, they've got to feel the part, right?
Right. So yeah, they've used the urethane microspheres to kind of dampen vibrations and improve feel. In fact, there's the full kitchen sink of Callaway technology in this. So MIM tungsten for precise weighting, high launch, that kind of thing. Urethane microspheres for feel, and cup face technology for more ball speed. So again, these are what they're supposed to be in that space, and they are absolutely loft jacked.
Well, that's what I was going to say. So I've already heard from some people that.
I don't even want to know what the 7 iron is.
Yeah, so I've already heard from some people that, the people that already have access to them for the fitters and things like that, and they're telling us they're long, and I'm going, okay, what's the lofts? So what are we at?
What's the spin rates off them too?
So 41-degree pitching wedge. So obviously we're
3
super
degrees
strong. Now so here we go. So here's kind of the butt, right? So I haven't had a chance to touch base with Dr. Hocknell over at Callaway. He's usually really forthcoming when I talk to him about how they do things. But what they've said is there's some spin preserving technology built into the face. And so the whole idea is, not only is it the typical story, like, yes, the lofts are strong, but we've got the CG deep, so they launch high, but they're also saying we've got technology in the face that helps put some spin back into these for more stopping power. So interesting story. TBD on whether or not it works, but here's kind of my concern with this release. And again, right, you don't know until you hit the full set and see how this all plays out. But I think most agree that you want consistent loft progressions. And so what I see here, if you look at the long iron, so that's I guess everything from the 4 to the 7, you have 3-degree progressions in the lofts. When you move to the 7 and 8 iron, that's a 4.5-degree progression. And then from 8, 9 and on, it's 5.5-degree progression.
Do we know what the so in the high, does it go up to 4 iron or 3 iron?
I think this is a 4 iron.
Okay, so do we know what the loft is for that? Is it 2 iron loft?
Actually, let me pull it up here. We'll go ghetto style here. So Epic Forge is an 18-degree 4 iron, and
that's a 2 iron for everyone out there.
So it's 18, 21, 24, 27, 31.5, 36, 41, 46, 51, 56. So that's half the offering, right? So that's kind of their mass market ultra premium offering. At the same time, they've also updated the Epic Star line. So a bit of a refresher. This is kind of a premium offering targeting slower swing speed players.
Just so everyone out there knows, that was a JDM Japanese style design, right? That is being retargeted, remarketed, whatever you want to call it, to the U.S. market to some degree. It is basically lighter, and it is built for slower swing speeds. And in the Japanese market, they have, if you take the average of their swing speeds per average for the American golfer, their swing speeds are slower than ours, and they also generally prefer a more ornate piece of a golf equipment, and they're willing to pay more money for it, right?
They perceive the value or the performance to be higher if it costs more. Right?
One of the coolest stories from the PGA show when I was first getting into the industry, man, I walked into this thing, and I was big into putters back there. I walk into the putter corral, and it was much bigger back those days, and there was a putter company setting up, and a Japanese distributor walked over and goes, they were all limited edition putters sitting out there. He goes, I'll buy them all. And the guy had just gotten the golf putter business. And he's like, okay. And the Japanese guy says, how much you sell them for? And he's like, 260. He goes, and he literally just walks off. And the guy's like, well, wait a second. I thought you wanted all the putters. He's like, not for $260. He's like, what do you mean? He goes, if they sold for 600 or 1,000, I'd buy them all right now. Literally, he didn't even care. He didn't want them cheaper. He wanted them more expensive, because that's is something that market. They prefer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that product looks more luxurious. It is also built for a different type of golfer. So they kind of like the Zexio model in America, right? So they're bringing it over here, and it doesn't cannibalize the Epic Flash that they have. It does a couple things, in my opinion. Tony, tell me if you agree. It gives them more sales number for the Epic Flash family, but doesn't cannibalize their main driver because this is targeted to a completely different golfer. Is that correct?
The same guy's not going to buy both drivers.
Textbook line extension, right? That's kind of the phrase you use is we're just extending the line. So,
is this? Sorry, Tony, to cut you off. Is this like the same as what Titleist, the same kind of demographic they're going towards where the Titleist brought out their new one?
Yes, but I would say the approach to the driver is different. Let's start with the irons and we'll work to the driver because the irons are interesting and spoiler alert, I just don't like what they've done with the driver. So we'll get there. But to start off where we like to start off, guys, the pitching wedge on the Epic Forge Star, 38 degrees. So very much a hey,
that's
look,
my
like,
8
this
iron.
is. Yeah, it's a Japanese market spec. So, I mean, I know guys are going to scream loft jacking and freak out. And again, my concern with that, because to a degree, I believe and seen evidence, right? You can do stuff with weight placement to get higher launch and all that stuff. But for a product that targets a slower swing speed player, again, part of launch comes from speed. So how are you going to get a 38-degree pitching wedge in the air if you're a slow swing?
But ball go far.
I think the Tommy Armour Atomic irons are 39-degree pitching wedges.
They're pretty close. But the only way to you have to get your dynamic loft so high. You basically have to flicker the wrists to try and get it to go high.
Yeah, and again, my concern here isn't necessarily with the static loft, right? Because that kind of is what it is, and if a golfer likes that to a degree, fine. But again, it's the loft progression. So if you go from the 5 to the 7, so the 5, 6, and 7, there's a 2-degree loft
Why is that?
progression?
Because
and here's the thing: what we find with a lot of golfers, certainly average golfers, long iron gaps aren't what they're supposed to be anyway. When they're 3 to 4 degrees, they're already too narrow. So my concern here is at 2 degrees, you're narrowing further, which probably isn't great. When you move to the 7 and 8 irons, those gaps increase to 3 degrees. In the 8 and 9 iron, they're 4 degrees. 9 through pitch iron, they're 5-degree gaps. And then when you go to the A wedge, the gap wedge, and the sand wedge, those gaps are 6 degrees. So you're building in a 6-degree gap between wedges on top of a 5-degree, on top of a 4, on top of a 3.
This is the problem that I have with Callaway in general. And once again, not picking on the brand, but this is just they're throwing watermelons up there for us. I mean, like, this is not focused on anything but sales, in my opinion. Anything. And they are cutting corners. They're charging higher prices, premium prices, right? but they're giving the customer something that they think they want, but they don't need, you know?
But you want to assume that the guys in the R&D department at Callaway are saying there is a reason that we're only going to use 2-degree gaps in our lofting from
because
the
if you
long
don't
irons.
do that, you're to get the distance that they're trying. This is my assumption. To get the distance that they want in the launch monitor battles, you've got to hit it for certain irons, right? You got to be at that loft number. If you did that and didn't have those progressions, what would your lofts be?
I guess that's a good
Well, and
point.
again,
but when I go and I
look,
hit my
let's-
7-iron the same distance I hit my 6-iron, what the hell's the point?
And there is potentially some stuff with sole width and weight progression and all that stuff that adds dynamic loft here in the long irons. But again, everybody tells this story to some degree, right? Hey, well, we can get more launch out of an 18-degree 4-iron or whatever it is. But, man, those 2-degree progressions are tight. And so
That's
this
so
is a
weird
case
to
where
me.
I've got to see it work.
But
before I go
these are
do it.
these are for like the moderate swing speeds, correct? These are for
Yeah,
like
slow swing speed,
right.
sure.
So if you say slow, the average golfer is not going to be using their 4-iron, 5-iron, and 6-iron. They're going to be using. They're going to be taking those straight out and putting like a hybrid in, and then when it comes to the lower end of the set,
It just
they
doesn't
might
make
want
sense.
that, but it doesn't make sense. But I think that they
The
don't
person
really
you're
care
selling
about
it-
that up
The
there.
person you're selling those to
Doesn't
and
even
supposedly
know.
for doesn't need any of that. They need the opposite of that.
Right, it's
Yeah, and-
exactly
I
the same
mean,
as what Mizuno was.
But they don't know
opposite
that
of
they
Mizuno.
need
Sorry,
that, right?
Exactly.
But they don't even know that they need that, right?
no, they don't.
I
That
want to
golfer, does he
keep
know
an
that
open
he
mind on
needs-
this.
No, but
More
that's why I
gapping?
think they're taking advantage of what consumers think they need, but don't, or think they want, but don't need.
Right.
Yeah, and look, I want to keep an open mind on this. And again, like I said, there could be something in the dynamic properties, but
Tony, we've
to
tested
be
these
brutally
irons.
honest, a 6-degree progression with the wedges, when you start at a 2-degree progression in your long irons and work your way up to a 6-degree progression in your wedges, that scares the shit out of me. Like, who has 6-degree progressions in their wedges?
Well, two
I've got
degree
5.
2-degree progression in your long irons, like you said, you're basically playing the exact same iron for most golfers at that point. They wouldn't even know
By the
that-
time you factor in mishits, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think
it's
like the
just-
average guy, if you look, I've seen some Arcos data, for example, and a lot of times the 5 and the 6-iron are a washout anyway.
Look,
right?
we're
Like,
all about performance over marketing, and our job is to call these type of situations out, in my opinion, and that is marketing over performance, in my
these
opinion.
Yeah,
guys
and
are the
again,
ones that do
like I said, I'm
What?
open to the idea that there's more to it than the static numbers tell us, but certainly these progressions are weird. Is how I phrase it. Now,
Are these the only guys doing it in the industry?
Strong off?
like everybody
but
toys with
loft
lofts.
progressions like that.
No, and again, this is one of the things Chris Vishal said, right? Where to a degree, companies are sort of engineering their 7-iron because that's the demo club right now. So
Yep.
you engineer a 7-iron to win a launch monitor battle.
And
Because
then
again, if you're
everything
going
else
to a
around
cool
it.
clubs or a custom fitter, they're gonna take care of all this stuff. But for a guy who's walking into a big box store and whichever goes longest is going to win, like that's what you have to engineer for. And once you put a number on that 7-iron,
That's my point.
you sort of have to build everything else to work as best it can around
Bingo.
that number. Now let's talk the driver. Like I said, this is one I really don't like. I didn't like it when they did the first Epic Star, and I don't like it for basically the same reason. So Chris and we went through and we took the numbers from the presentation and actually took an Epic head and measured it, an Epic flash head, I should say, and measured it against the spec that Callaway provides for this head. So basically what this is a fixed hosel version of the Epic flash. When you take that hosel weight out, it basically washes out. So they haven't engineered anything out of the head. They've just adapted it for a fixed hosel. It's essentially the same weight as an Epic head with the adapter. All of the weight savings come from the head and the grip. So ultralight grip, ultralight shaft, no real weight change to the head, unlike what Titleist did with the TS1, where they actually took a significant weight, bunch of weight out of the head. The difference there is, right, you get a truly lighter weight head.
So what
product.
you're saying is kind of a trend that happened back to the Atom speed line, right? Aerodynamics, and there were some lighter things that everyone started to try back then, right? And then it went crazy for a while. Everyone went in with a lighter version, and what we found was lighter is not always better for what it's meant to do, right? And there's a point of diminishing returns and a point where that quote unquote technology, which is just making things lighter, doesn't actually benefit those that it's made for. Would you agree?
Well, I think for the target market, lighter probably is better. But my larger point here is they haven't taken anything out of the head. So
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah. So they whereas Titleist, for example, actually made the head lighter, made every element of the club lighter. Here, Callaway is essentially giving you the same head. They're giving you a lighter grip and a lighter shaft, and for that you pay $170 more.
So that
compared to again what Titleist
and no adapter.
Right. Well, yeah, and you lose adjustability, but you do maintain the MOI, which you typically lose moving to a lighter.
So
head. But
doesn't that go into the fact that their marketing for every single from the new irons is different than that? Like that, they're not going for performance, for relatability to.
I mean, I'm trying to imagine myself sitting around a boardroom and go, so we're going to give them a lighter shaft, lighter grip, same head, but paint it black and charge $150 or $175 more.
Market it differently.
Do you think they'll buy that? Yeah, let's do
again,
it. How does that make sense?
This is the thing.
That's the point.
That's exactly my point.
Again,
right
this is being billed as ultra premium, and part of that ultra premium placement is the price tag. But look, if we're making a reasonable evaluation of what Callaway did here versus what Titleist did with the TS1, so Titleist took weight out of the head. Callaway didn't do that, and again, you can argue both sides, right? Lighter could be better. You may want the additional MOI with the head weight. So maybe that's a push. Both companies give you a lighter shaft. Both companies give you a lighter grip. I think both give you a lighter golf pride grip.
But I'm asking you a question. Where does the $175 extra come in?
It's that gold paint,
dog. Hold on. Where does that where are you adding that up to where it equals let's charge $175 more to the consumer?
I think it's
the
a
argument
perception thing.
Last time around was in the shaft. Now it's an ultra premium lightweight shaft. We've talked about this before. For a guy who is in this target demographic, which is 80 to 85 miles an hour or less, you sort of don't need the premium exotic materials, right? You're not getting a lot of T1100 or pitch 70 in these shafts. These are standard issue graphite, and yes, there is some engineering to make them lighter. But like I said, Titleist can offer essentially the same package with a lighter weight head, so lighter grip, lighter shaft, and they're doing it for the same price as everything else. Whereas to do this with a Callaway, you're paying $170 more for essentially an epic head with a bonded hosel and other.
I wish people would just use their common sense in this and go,
hey,
if I've got to buy 2 gallons of milk, one's painted black with a gold cap, that's painted black, not real gold, and one is in a clear jug, and they're charging me $50 for this one and $5 for this one. No,
that's consumer behavior. But hey, they're selling this in Japan, right? They're marketing
this.
This is a U.S. release. So this is a Japanese release, Japanese spec product
targeted for us,
brought to the U.S. but maintaining the premium price. So, like I said, I can argue a case for the irons. I think there's some intrigue in there and some things they're at least doing differently. Here, it's just 2 lightweight components and a paint job and a $170 upcharge.
That's
and
showbiz,
that's tough to swallow.
It's called a money grab.
Yep.
Anyway,
I don't like it. Don't like that one.
All right, so lots of new releases. We're going to cover some more real fast, just so you know what's out there, what to look for, and what we think about it. And one up right now is the Ping Glide 3.0 i2.
They got all the soul grinds.
Wedge. Huh?
They got all the soul grinds. But i2 is one of them.
So the i2, if you're 35 and under, you might not know this. If you're older than that, you definitely do. It's probably the most interesting looking wedge that ever came out. It's probably the most kept. It's like the FJ Cruiser of cars. People don't get rid of these things. There's beryllium copper ones that were up for $3,500 plus on Second Swing if you're interested. And so what's the 3.0 version of this where they're bringing it back in a sort of kind of way?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's fair to say, right, that the ISOL in particular is the inspiration for all of the high toe stuff we see these days. So I think you can kind of trace it back to that. And it's probably Ping's answer to its own answer that's not an answer putter. So Glide 3.0 wedges. It's interesting. I say Ping has done some exploration in the wedge category in recent. So we've got the recent times. Glide 2.0 Stealth. This is sort of the evolution of this that is also not the Glide Forge, which is a totally different thing. So 321 cast from 431 steel, which is going to be firmer than, say, something like a 1025E that Mizuno uses. And so to mitigate that, bigger custom tuning port for feel and lots of different sole grind bounce options.
We just got them in the office yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
Super soft.
Yeah, they
Very nice.
feel good if you're into feel.
Story for another day, but how crazy is it that Carson Solheim, his putter, his wedge, still to this day, man, after all these years, impacting designs that come out from all these companies. Pretty amazing. So that's the Ping Glide 3.0 i2 wedge. Take a look at that if you get a second. And
yeah, so the big thing with the i2 model is the narrow hosel and kind of that higher toe. It's really designed for easy out and less resistance through a bunker.
One other thing that you're going to see this week, probably at the Open, right?
Mm-hmm.
The Open Championship.
The Open.
Yes. Is going to be a new club from Titleist called the U500 and U510. And Tony, what do they need to be looking at for that?
So 2 utility irons, 2 different models. Story is what you would expect. The U500 is narrower sole, thinner top line, designed for better players who want to work the ball. U510, wider sole, thicker top line, more offset, designed for more of the average golfer crowd, designed to get the ball up in the air. And that's basically really it. I mean, right, it's a direct long iron replacement, to borrow a phrase from Mizuno, for players who don't like hybrids. The really interesting thing, I suppose, to some anyway, is going to be that we've confirmed with Titleist that with the release of the U500 and U510 that there will not be a TMB replacement this time around. So instead of making a full set of utility clubs, they've decided to focus on just the long iron replacements here. So if you didn't care about TMB, no big deal. If you love TMB, too bad, I guess.
She gone.
All right, so that's like a ton of new releases. Do we have any more?
Yeah. One more that's worth mentioning, just because there's a new technology here. So released alongside the Mizuno MP20. As you know, they didn't come out with a wedge last year. That was so they could replace, sort of put their more game improvement S series alongside the JPX, and then put the T series alongside the MP series where it belongs. So we got a new T20 wedge available in a satin chrome, a blue ion, and a raw finish. Suck it, lefties. Only the satin chrome is available for you. Sorry, guys. The big thing here is a new groove. So they're calling it a HydroFlow micro groove. And the analogy they use
the words that golf companies come up with tech, man.
So
HydroFlow.
So they sort of liken it to treads on a tire, where it's designed to funnel moisture away from the impact area.
We know
and
how
so the story
important
they're
moisture
telling
is in
is,
between the grooves of a club.
So what Chris said, what Vishal told us is, if you really want to spin the shit out of the ball from the fairway, and that is a quote, you might be better off with a Vokey. But if you're looking for consistent spin, so dry condition, wet consistent, wet conditions, you want to get as close to that same number as you can.
That's smart.
The story is that the HydroFlow micro groove retains more spin in wet conditions. Like it's nearly the same as dry conditions, and that matters. Certainly, we saw it when we attempted the wet portion of our ball test. As soon as you get moisture between the club face and the ball, launch angle increases 5 degrees plus. We saw spin in some cases can be cut in half. So if you can maintain more spin in moist conditions with a wedge groove, that's a pretty big deal now.
Well.
Ideally, you want the same spin for every condition, right?
Well, yeah, and before you guys move on, there's one thing I want to notice. And when you're going out golfing this weekend, if you're a dew sweeper, you play in the mornings, pay attention to the kind of reaction your golf ball gets when you're hitting that first shot into the green in the morning. Because ever since we did the wet wedge test, when we ran the ball test, I've been paying attention, and it is drastic. It's
it gets high launch.
If you know it's coming,
what's going to happen, you can play for it.
Exactly.
Like once you understand what's going to happen, you can play for it.
Exactly.
So that's huge. There's one other thing I wanted to talk about. Oh yeah, one other thing about these wedges. So again, this is a micro groove. We've seen this on other wedges where it looks like a pattern on the groove, and as soon as you hit 20 shots out of a bunker, it's gone. The difference here is they put the micro groove on before the plating process, so you get the benefit of the groove, The downside for Mizuno is the technology itself is barely visible when you're looking at the wedge, but the upside is it doesn't wear off like you get with other wedges.
So the plating hit it, but it actually works better and longer.
Yeah. Gotcha. So it's going to be an interesting one to check out and see if it does what it says it does. And I think if we're looking for a lab test to do and really check this out, like a wet wedge test with the HydroFlow micro groove versus, obviously if I'm going to pick one, the Vokey, right? By far and away the number one wedge in the market. So does this retain more spin in wet conditions than a Vokey? It'd be really interesting to get down to. So yeah, that's it. We've got MP20s, T20s, Glide 3.0s, U500, U510s. Should mention with the Callaway stuff, there is also new hybrid that sits between the Apex and the Big Bertha. It's really just kind of a size thing.
I don't think there's a way that anyone's going to remember all these clubs.
Yeah, so basically the whole industry has come out with a new launch.
I keep trying. I want golfers to care, but we see it in every hybrid story we tell. Nobody gives a shit, but know that it exists. There's a new hybrid, and with the Flash Star fairway woods and hybrids as well.
All right, so just a reminder, we have a bet
between
Harry and Sam for the Open, and you've got Rory, and you've got Koepka.
Flip it.
I've got
You've
Rory.
got Koepka, you've got Rory, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Whoever loses, we got a whole bag of infomercial clubs right there.
And I'm not gonna lie, the sandpaper wedge might beat out the
And you know
the
what's
Mizuno.
You know what's funny is I actually think I'm gonna lose this just because if I think Brooks has a higher chance of finishing in the top 5 than Rory does.
Okay.
Like either Rory's gonna win or finish 12th.
Okay. Well, we're gonna
Brooks
see.
is gonna win or finish.
We're
top
gonna
5.
see.
I hear the
All right.
excuses already.
I know. God.
Hey, I'm ready. I'm gonna start practicing with that square strike. We're gonna be good.
Better get that hammer driver practice in. All right. So one other thing is we have a new MGS major marker coming out today, 3:00. This video might or might not even be out there by 3:00. The podcast might be, but we're going to pick one of you that does a review on the podcast, and we're going to send you one of the limited edition 99 made MGS major marker. It's basically like it's a watch face. It's pretty cool. You can see it on the screen now. It is the last MGS major marker of the year for the Open. Mm-hmm. And we're going to give one of those away to somebody that leaves a review on the podcast or a comment today on the video. And we'll announce that next week on the next week's podcast.
What's the time set to on the watch?
It's the 148th Open, and it's set to 148.
148. See what you did there?
That's clever.
It's pretty smart. Going straight in my basket.
All right, that's enough for this week.
It's be done now.
That's it for this week. Subscribe.
Thanks for listening to all of it.
Yes, the long version. You guys wanted a short one, and you didn't listen as long as the long one. Now you said you wanted the long one back. So the long one's back in a special Wednesday edition. Comment, subscribe, review, whatever you do. We love to hear it. And until next week is episode 10. So see you next week.